Welcome back to my channel. I'm Jeannie and this is On the Hook Crochet. And let's find out what's on the hook. This has been on my hook and I'm finally finished with it. It's my Sweet Everly Bee sweater pattern made in Harmony yarn, and it's very beautiful James Brett yarn, and I'm very pleased with it. I finally finished it. I got it all sewn together, and you see I'm wearing it with a just a very light long sleeve knit shirt underneath in black. It looks fine. A tank top would look good as well, but it's a little cool today, so I'm wearing a long sleeve shirt underneath it. And I'll stand up and let you see how this looks made up. It's pretty interesting. It's not as easy a transition as far as the colors go as the sweater that I completed and was in my very last video, the denim sweater. So let me just stand up and show you what this looks like. It's a it's an interesting look. It's very interesting the way the stitches were done, and the way the yarn actually appears on here. It's not even a whole line of pink there, just for a little ways, and little pieces of color. Some are large, like this green up here at the top went on forever and ever, and then this one, this one, this one, and then the pink was just in there for a little while. Look, this one too. It's not all the way across. So you can kind of see how the colors blend into each other. I do like the pink. I think it's a nice touch. And if you wanted to get really fancy, you could wear a pink knit shirt underneath it. A pink tank top or something like that might be really cute with this. And these kind of accent the color pink. So I really like it. I hope you do too. And here's the pattern. I know some people were saying I wasn't holding things up good enough, so let me do that. This is in my description box. I'll put a link to this pattern. It's the Bell Crop Sweater by Sweet Everly Bee, and I believe it's free. It's a free pattern, so you can go right out there and print it off. There are lots and lots of measurements, stitches, stitch counts, all that is in here, and in a minute we're going to talk about that just for a second. But I wanted to show you this as my my finished object actually for this video. So I'm real excited to have it in my wardrobe, and I'll be wearing it quite a bit. So the next thing I wanted to talk about, and it's kind of important in the crochet world, and people who are just beginning crochet, or if you've been crocheting a long time, you know that when you work on a project, sometimes it doesn't work out. And that's due to two things. Maybe your choice of yarn wasn't all that great, or actually three things. The size that you're making, if it's a fitted garment, maybe it was incorrect. And the pattern itself might not lend itself to a good project ending, if you know what I mean. So sometimes I find a pattern that I really like this one, and I can make it 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and it turns out great every time. And because I'm selecting the right kind of yarn with nice drape to it, and the sweater needs drape. You can't make it out of something stiff like I was talking about in my last video. If you pick cotton yarn and there's no acrylic in it, it has to be a soft cotton. Otherwise, the sweater will stand up by itself and it won't look all that great on you. It needs to have some drape so that, when it's not fitted to you, it'll fall and it'll drape nicely. So that's maybe a little too much information, but 3 things that might happen to your project. 2 works in progress that I have going right now. One of which is the Mary Maxim Blanky Blanket, and I talked about this in a previous video, and I think Mary Maxim is in the title of the video, so it's easy to find. But it's made out of this Trendy Baby yarn from Mary Maxim. It's a size 3. And I've been working on this for way too long because it wasn't the pattern's fault. It was my fault because I wasn't paying attention. I talked about that last time. I was watching basketball games, so I wasn't paying attention. So I went this morning and I laid it out on my dining room table, and this is what happened. So I frogged it, and this is what I have left. It's probably 4 or 5 inches shorter or less wide than it was, but I've got it down to where the number of stitches is correct. So I'll be working on that in the next few weeks, and hopefully I can finish it and it'll have the right number of stitches on it. Again, that was my fault. I should have been paying attention. The pattern was a very good pattern. Now, for my second example, in my last video I talked about crocheting a top-down raglan sweater, and I had the yarn that I was going to use, a landscape yarn, double knitting yarn by James Brett, which is got to be one of my favorites. It's a beautiful yarn, beautiful colors. It's actually a navy and red, and they're very subtle colors, so they're going to blend really nicely. And I did find out as I began this pattern, they are gorgeous together. And let me show it to you. This is the front of the sweater, and I'll show you how that looks on camera. It's even more beautiful in person. It is absolutely gorgeous, the way the colors blend into each other. I don't know if you can see that, but there's almost a pink there, and then a navy blue, red, and back to the pink. So the colorway is a beautiful choice of colors. And on this sweater, look how beautiful that looks. It looks like it was designed with the colors in mind. And I'm very pleased with how it looks. However, the pattern that I was using, and I removed the link from my last video because I can't feel good about the pattern. I hate that I even said where I got it from, because I'm not endorsing the pattern. I'm going to suffer through the pattern and finish the sweater, because I've been crocheting for 40 years and I know how to do that. But I would never expect anyone else to spend the time or the energy on a pattern that wasn't specific enough and detailed enough. And if you'll take a look at this, this is just part of the pattern along the side. Look what I had to do. I had to figure out how many stitches were in each row, because each row increases 8 stitches around. Every time you go around, you increase 8, and that makes the sweater grow larger, so to accommodate your shoulders and your arms. So I had to calculate how many stitches were in each row. When I did that, I realized that the designer had only given the number for the medium sweater. I'm making the small, so I kept thinking, why don't I have enough stitches in here? So I increased to make the number of stitches that were correct, and then I realized that there was no number for the small sweater, only for the medium sweater. So I was actually making the medium sweater, and that's not what I wanted to do. So I went back and I calculated the number of stitches that I needed for each row in the small, and I'm still going to be 4 stitches off according to her next section, where you skip a spot and then you work the body. So I'm going to ad-lib this pattern because I don't want to rip it out. I don't want to rip it out. So I'm going to finish working on it and do my very best to make it look right. And then I'm going to look for a pattern that is a little more accurate. And I'm still going to look for a top-down women's raglan pattern, and I will probably make that out of the Lion brand jeans if I can make the gauge work. And I actually did a gauge swatch for this, and it was perfect. It turned out really nice. It's a number 3. The Lion's brand jeans yarn that she calls for is a number 4, but this actually worked up the same gauge as she was talking about for Lion brand. So I was right about my guess that this was as big a yarn as Lion brand, even though one is marked a 4 and this one is marked a 3. I plan to work on this, and I will finish it, even if I have to adjust the pattern some more. Making decisions in crochet is important because you have invested so much time. For example, in that blanket, I had invested 4 or 5 hours in all those rows that I frogged this morning. And I frogged them all out, and this is what I've ended up with. So I'm not back to square one. It's not like I frogged the whole thing out, but I lost a lot of time there. And I had to decide, do I want to frog it and make it perfect, or do I want to just kind of ad-lib all the way through the end of the blanket. And I really didn't want to do that because I'm going to give this blanket to my daughter who just had a baby November 28th and of last year. And I wanted this blanket for him, and I don't want it to be anything less than perfect. If it was for me, I might keep going and go whatever, you know. But I'm giving it away as a gift, and I want it to be perfect from his Gigi. So I'll frogged it, and I'll continue to work on it till I finish it, and then I will give it to her and present it to her. And she watches my videos, so she's got a blankie coming. So if you've hung in with me to the end of this video, I appreciate it. If it was useful to you, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. If you think it might be useful, I would love for you to come back and join me again. And we're going to find out what's on the hook next time.